Hey everyone, it's Pastor James Huenink here at First Lutheran Church answering your questions from the internet. Today the question is, why don't you explain what happened with the Canaanites, that God told the Israel to kill them, man, woman, and child? And I would be happy to explain that one. So this question is one that bothers quite a few people, and it bothers them because it's pretty upsetting that God might do something like kill everybody in a tribe, man, woman, and child. And it offends their sense of justice. They're like, God is mean. I don't like that. So let's actually take a look at why did God do that? Moses actually seems to be interested in this question too, because pretty frequently, I think he actually sets up why God did that and why God brought about this punishment. So let's take a look at those questions. So Genesis sets this up. When God is talking to Abraham in Genesis chapter 15, he predicts what's going to happen with going down to Egypt and slavery and things like that. So Genesis chapter 15 verses 13 through 16 says, "Know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and after they shall come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age, and they shall come back here in the fourth generation. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete." Notice what he says there. He says, "For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete." God is looking ahead to the Canaanites, of whom the Amorites are, and he's seeing in the future they are going to do things that are worth being punished, and they're not that sinful yet. So the Amorites aren't evil like they will be in 400 years. So God isn't going to punish them now because they don't deserve it. In 400 years, when Israel comes back to the promised land, that sin will be complete and they'll deserve the punishment. In Genesis chapter 18, Abraham negotiates with God over the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And it's a really fascinating passage because Abraham goes to God and he says, God, you're a God of justice and you would never punish someone who doesn't deserve it. So if there are 50 people in the towns, 50 righteous people, will you spare them? God goes, yeah. And God negotiates all the way down to 10 people. If there are just 10 good and righteous people in Sodom and Gomorrah, God will spare the town. But he couldn't find anyone. And so God destroys Sodom and Gomorrah, and Lot and his family are spared. Now, why is this part of this? Well, this is showing that God doesn't give judgment without the due punishment being part of that. And he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because they were judged guilty. They were not righteous. They received the just punishment for what they had done. The character of God here is shown such that he doesn't order the deaths of people unless they deserve it. Abraham's negotiation with God over Sodom and Gomorrah shows us simply Sodom and Gomorrah deserve this judgment, and the character of God is the same when he is sending Joshua into the land of Canaan. God only punishes the guilty. Later on in the books of the law, God points Israel to the sins of the Canaanites and the Amorites and talks about how their sin was the reason why they were destroyed. So in Leviticus chapter 18, we see a whole bunch of sexual sins being outlawed for Israel. And it says, "Do not make yourselves unclean by any of these things. For by all these, the nations I am driving out before you have become unclean, and the land became unclean, so that I punished its iniquity, and the land vomited out its inhabitants." So there's a whole list of things that God brings judgment on and he sends Israel into the promised land to kill them all, man, woman, and child, for sins like this. There's more, of course. Leviticus chapter 20, we see laws against child sacrifice, sorcery, cult prostitution, and other sins. And God says these nations are being driven out because they practiced all these things. God is expelling the Canaanites from the land, destroying them because of their sin. We also see later, Deuteronomy chapter 12, Israel's told not to adopt the kind of worship that the Canaanites do, because they do things that makes God hate them, including burning their sons and daughters in the fire to gods. They're practicing violence and child sacrifice, which really should give us in America a warning, shouldn't it? So, Deuteronomy points out that the Canaanites are being punished for their violence and their child sacrifice. Deuteronomy chapter 18 does the same thing for sorcery, divination, and necromancy, witchcraft, all that sort of stuff. And it says, because of these abominations, the Lord your God is driving them out before you. For this reason, they are to destroy the Canaanites. And Deuteronomy chapter 20, he says, devote them to destruction so that they may not teach you to do according to all their abominable practices. And it's connected to making sure that Israel doesn't learn from the Canaanites to do the evil things that drove the Canaanites out of the land, that God justly gave their punishment. The guilt of the Canaanites was so great that God sent his divine wrath onto them through Joshua and the Israelites. And this should remind us that the fact that we live in a world where things are good for guilty people like us sinners, right? God doesn't punish us the way we deserve, because what we deserve is to be like the Canaanites. Because, well, maybe we might not be doing divination and all of those things, but we're still sinners who deserve punishment. God instead sent his son Jesus to die for us. Pretty great. Now, you may have noticed I wasn't trying to defend God in any way. I wasn't trying to justify it. I wasn't trying to say anything. God says he punished them for their evil, and that's it. Why not? Why am I not trying to defend God and make him sound just? Well, because God is God, and he defines justice. He is the one who gets to do these things. And many people, when they hear this sort of thing, the Canaanites and their destruction, they would say, well, how can you believe in a God who does that? I have to say, what if we applied that reasoning to other things? How can you believe in a gravity that causes people to fall off cliffs? I could never believe in gravity that does that. Come on. Just because you don't like what gravity does doesn't mean you stop believing in it. And that's really what's happening here, is God either exists or he doesn't. Whether you believe, whether you like what he does, doesn't change that fact. And so if you dislike what he did with the Canaanites, that doesn't change that he sent his son Jesus to die for you. And without him, you will not have eternal life. In fact, without him, you will go to hell forever. So if you don't like what he did, too bad. He still sent Jesus to die for you. He still sent Jesus to give you life. And if you don't believe in him and don't receive that salvation, it doesn't matter whether you like God or not. So that's kind of where I stand. Tell me what you think. This one might get you going. That's it. Bye.